Hello, it's ShadeX, and I'm a Spider-Man fan. Spider-Man has had a lot of cartoons over the years. Some are really good like the 90s series and Spectacular, and some are really bad like Ultimate and the 2017 show. Then there's Spider-Man Unlimited, which is really weird, and this show is rarely talked about. All the other shows are about Spider-Man in New York fighting the usual villains. However, in Spider-Man Unlimited, he fights furries on an alternate Earth. Spider-Man Unlimited is a show that aired on Fox Kids from 1999 to 2001. The show only lasted a single season with a total of 13 episodes, but the original plan was to double that amount. Saban, the company who made the show, wanted to adapt the first 26 issues of the Amazing Spider-Man comic book series into an episode each. However, Marvel shut this idea down and told them Spider-Man could not wear his iconic costume in the show. Additionally, the writers could not use any comics as source material because of the Sony Spider-Man film that was in development at the time. This meant that the story had to be original and that Spider-Man would need a new costume. In an interview with Newsarama, Will Meguniet, the show's co-creator, said it almost became a Spider-Man 29/9 cartoon, though this idea was only discussed for a week. Another idea they had was having two Peter Parkers interact with each other, kind of like Spider-Verse. On Counter-Earth, Uncle Ben would still be alive, meaning that Peter Parker from Counter-Earth would lack the moral fortitude to resist becoming Venom. Again, Marvel turned down the idea as they were afraid people would compare the show to the Clone Saga. Will believed that Counter-Earth Uncle Ben would have been the emotional core of the show, and he was disappointed to hear Marvel decline such a radical plot. It would have been cool to see Counter-Earth Spider-Man as Venom and to see Spider-Man meet Counter-Earth Uncle Ben. Although the 90s Spider-Man cartoon did have a similar plotline happen with Spider-Carnage. Still, it's a shame this idea never came into fruition, but what Spider-Man fans did get was a very weird and fun show. One of the best things about this show is its intro. It starts out with Spider-Man's iconic origin story, followed by him fighting off Venom and Carnage. It's what one would expect from a Spider-Man cartoon intro. And then he goes into space. The intro shows off quite a lot, such as the main villain, the High Evolutionary, anthropomorphic animals, and Counter-Earth versions of iconic Spider-Man villains. All of this is accompanied by a cool techno song and a comic book-like art style that carries over to the show itself. I really like this art style, even more than the art style of the 90s series, which I think looks really charming. The show sticks to this comic book theme by using yellow text boxes for transitions. Anyway, this intro is a nice preview of what the show has to offer. So, what is the show about? The first 2 episodes of Spider-Man Unlimited answer this question while doing a great job setting up the series. The first episode starts off with New York turning against Spider-Man because J. Jonah Jameson blames him for stranding his son John in space. In order to clear his name, Spider-Man must save John, who reveals on TV that he is stranded on Counter-Earth. Spider-Man then makes a new high-tech costume with nanotechnology, since his previous costume got damaged in an accident earlier in the episode. This is their excuse to make a new costume, since they were denied use of the iconic costume. Spider-Man then crash lands on the planet and learns about the planet's inhabitants. The ruling group is a group of furries known as Bestials, created by an evil scientist known as the High Evolutionary. They rule over the planet's remaining humans and wreak havoc alongside the High Evolutionary's elite guard, the Knights of Wundagore. In the second episode, Spider-Man gets saved by the rebels after the Knights of Wundagore capture him. Also appearing in the episode are the iconic Spider-Man villains Venom and Carnage, who are working for a hive mind symbiote called the Synoptic without the High Evolutionary knowing. Spider-Man is introduced to a group of rebels who are being led by none other than John Jameson himself. Then Venom and Carnage appear, along with an army of symbiote-controlled furries, and launch an attack on the rebel base. Of course, Spider-Man won't tolerate any of this, and teams up with the human rebels to kick some furry butt. Despite how alien this concept was at the time for Spider-Man, I really love this show's plot. What stands out to me the most is the show's characters, especially how the writers handle a few of the Counter-Earth versions of Spider-Man's villains. One of my favorites, Counter-Earth's Green Goblin, is introduced in episode 3, Where Evil Nests, which is coincidentally is also one of my favorite episodes. In the episode, Dr. Naoko Yamato Jones is kidnapped by a green tentacle. Her son Shane witnesses this and tells Spider-Man about it. Spider-Man believes that Counter-Earth Green Goblin is responsible for such a vile act. The two get in a fight, but they end up teaming up to save Naoko. In a later episode, it's revealed that the Counter-Earth Green Goblin is none other than Hector Jones, the estranged husband of Naoko and the father of Shane. Hector started out as a part of the Human Revolution, but it made him grow so distant from his family that he abandoned them. He still clearly cares about them though, and even grows jealous after he thinks Peter Parker is dating his wife. It's interesting that in his first appearance he is shown saving his family, but nobody had any idea that it's him. Another thing I want to mention is that Spider-Man and Green Goblin in this show shared the same voice actor, whose name is Rino Romano. Another usual Spider-Man villain who is actually a hero on Counter-Earth is none other than Vulture. He is a human with bestial powers who used to work alongside the Bestials. While he joined them in messing around with the humans, he also hung out with a few of them and even befriended one. But his human friend gets hurt, which leads to him becoming a hero who defends humans from bestials. I wish the Counter-Earth villains were more interesting like these two, but the rest of them end up being generic villains that don't deviate much from the original counterparts. Counter-Earth Kraven is literally just regular Kraven the Hunter. I do like that he's one of the few humans who's allowed to live with the bestials, but other than that, he's just Kraven. Honestly, I would have preferred if furry Kraven from Spectacular Spider-Man was in this show, since he'd fit in a lot better here. The only other Counter-Earth villain I can think of is Electro, who is an electric eel. While this is clever, he's only in one episode for a short amount of time, meaning he has nowhere near enough time to shine as some of the other villains do. I really enjoy the original villains that were created for the show, especially the High Evolutionary and the Knights of Wundagore. The High Evolutionary is a really weird villain, especially since he thinks that a world full of furries is the perfect utopia. He's all pissed about war, and his solution is, hey, let's make a world full of furries, then war will end. He's really weird. Also, I want to mention that one of the Knights of Wundagore, specifically Lady Vermin, is real thirsty for Spider-Man. She kisses him to his disgust in the second episode, but later Spider-Man kisses her twice on his own accord. First, he does it in order to get pictures for the Daily Bite, then he does it again to distract her when he's on a rescue mission. Anyway, Lady Vermin, she's real thirsty for Spider-Man. She just wants his web shooter so bad. Spider-Man Unlimited is definitely a character-oriented show, as its characters and how they develop is a strong attribute. In addition to new variants of well-known villains, it does a great job on fleshing out the new characters. For example, Git Hoskins is a human that was experimented on as a child by Sir Ram, one of the High Evolutionary's top fighters and scientists. Sir Ram turned young Git into a person made of bandages, making him an outcast among the other kids. In the episode Deadly Choices, he gets a hold of a bomb which will destroy Counter-Earth New York. But Spider-Man manages to convince Git to disable the bomb. Instead of taking out his hate on innocent civilians, he managed to get a little bit of revenge on Sir Ram by punching him in the face. Karen O'Malley, one of the human resistance leaders, also had some bestial experiments done on her. However, her experience was a lot more personal, as Sins of the Fathers reveals that the High Evolutionary is her grandpa. He personally conducted the experiments on her, but thankfully her parents rescued her. Karen's bestial form almost gets awakened, but she's rescued by Spider-Man before that can happen. Not only did this episode explain Karen's motivation for resisting, but it also created a more personal tie between her and the High Evolutionary, which I thought was an amazing concept handled gracefully. The show does include some old characters outside of Spider-Man himself, and the writers don't shy away from trying something new with them. I mentioned earlier that the show was originally going to be an adaptation of the Amazing Spider-Man comics, And while the idea wasn't fully realized for this series, one episode was loosely based on one of them. In said episode, Ill Met by Moonlight, John Jameson is given bestial powers by the High Evolutionary and becomes the Vicious Man-Wolf. Similar to another Marvel superhero, John turns into the Beast whenever he becomes angry. The conflict of John Jameson being Man-Wolf is resolved pretty quickly at the beginning of the episode. John reveals to Spider-Man that he was the Man-Wolf being attacked, and that he is trying to subdue his dangerous power. John does become the Man-Wolf again at the end of the episode. While Venom is typical Venom in this series, Eddie Brock gets an arc of his own, even if it's for a single episode. One is The Loneliest Number. An episode I personally love has Eddie forcefully separated from the Venom symbiote after one of the High Evolutionary scientists steals it. I love the concept of Eddie and Venom being separated, and I'm very glad this episode is very respectful in its execution. The Venom symbiote has been attached to Eddie for so long that it is the only thing that can keep him alive. One scene I found especially endearing is when Shane gives Eddie his handheld game console so he could enjoy the few moments of humanity he has left. Spider-Man ends up saving the Venom symbiote and even temporarily bonds himself with it, giving him back the black suit. He ends up returning the symbiote to Eddie, but Eddie would rather die than bond himself with Venom again. He ends up doing it anyway to save Naoko and Shane from carnage. The series ended on a cliffhanger. The High Evolutionary plans to play a loud frequency to kill all the humans on Counter-Earth. Of course, Spider-Man ends up defeating the High Evolutionary and the Knights of Wundagore with his suit's sonic power. Lord Tiger, one of the Knights of Wundagore, ends up joining the good side, a twist I did not see coming. Counter-Earth Green Goblin also returns, who Spider-Man thought died in the episode Sustenance. Counter-Earth Green Goblin reveals that he was saved by the Rejects, a group of bestials who are imperfect and were rejected by the High Evolutionary. The series ends with Cletus Kasady revealing that the Synoptic will be taking over because Carnage had a contingency plan after Eddie got separated from Venom. Then a giant blob appears. That's the end of the series, as we got it. So why was the show canceled? Because Pokemon was out around the same time and got higher ratings. In addition to that, Batman Beyond was out and was much more well received since it had much better writing, original characters, and connections to Batman the Animated Series. That show definitely overshadowed Spider-Man Unlimited. I wonder if Marvel did a Spider-Man 29.9 show, maybe that would have been a better competitor. There was a scrap season 2 for Spider-Man Unlimited, and a writer posted all his ideas for it online, but I'll let my friend Veritas Joe talk about that.
Hey, what's up? I'm Veritas Joe, and if you didn't know, I am completely obsessed with Spider-Man cartoons, and especially Spider-Man Unlimited. I've probably watched this show like 3-4 times now, and that's just because of how much I was into it. This isn't me just saying this for the video, I'm like genuinely obsessed with this show. Like, I originally wanted to do a video on this, but when I heard Shade was making his own video, I just decided like I was gonna watch, but now I get a chance to, chime in on this. But digressing no longer, if you didn't know, Spider-Man Unlimited ended on a cliffhanger, and that kind of left all of the main cast screwed over. I'm talking big screwed, like symbiote bug things released all across the planet. Now little old me with his iPad mini was dumbfounded by the idea that there was no solution to this. See, I didn't understand that cliffhangers existed and that shows didn't just end without getting a renewal. Typically cliffhangers like this are put in place so that the show gets renewed for a second season, but I guess sadly no one really cared about Spider-Man and his journey to Counter-Earth. So in order to combat this existential crisis I was going through, little me went across the internet looking for a solution or a season 2 that was there of sorts. Oddly enough, I found what I thought was the writer's script for a season 2. So I read it and was super elated, talking super happy about this. The symbiote threat was taken care of, Spider-Man saved the day, and the furries paid their dues. Yada yada, all of Counter-Earth turns forward. It was everything that little me wanted. Only problem though is that I kind of kept reading and found out that it was fan-made and not real. So I thought I had myself a conclusion, but needless to say, I was in fact very wrong and had nothing. So I cried myself to sleep and now I'm here, lamenting on my lost sorrows. Doing research though, I found what looks like to be a different website with the same episode descriptions as before from an official writer. That writer being the one that wrote Spider-Man Unlimited for Fox Kids. This script detailed names such as Destiny Unleashed Part 2, Cat Got Your Tongue, Nightcrawler, and other titles along with the whole synopsis of Season 2. Needless to say, I am not as upset about it as I was anymore. I still would like a Season 2, but it ain't happening. Frick. Time to go back to crying myself to sleep.
Thanks, Joe. I hope you feel better in the morning. To end this video, I want to first clarify that the High Evolutionary and the Knights of Wendigore actually were a thing in Marvel Comics before Spider-Man Unlimited. I just want to get this out of the way before a comics nerd comments below that I am wrong. I also want to mention that Spider-Man Unlimited got acknowledged by Marvel again in 2014 in the Spider-Verse event. In that comic, he ends up getting killed by the Inheritors, along with several Bestials. Apparently, Dan Slott thought the 90s Spider-Man, the one from Unlimited, were the same character. So he ended up killing that version of Spidey instead of the 90s animated series incarnation of the character. Spider-Man Unlimited is definitely worth a watch. It's a very weird show, and it is more out there than the 90s series and Spectacular Spider-Man. But it's not nearly as bad as Ultimate Spider-Man or the 2017 series. It's on Disney Plus, and I highly recommend that you check it out. This has been ShadeX, and thanks for watching.